Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. This is our second Academy member conversation, and we're really, really glad to have Ellen Lewis here representing the casting directors and Kate Sprance, who works with Ellen. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, and I hope you'll take in this information. It's really great. We're just very happy as I'm part of the Academy to work with everyone at Real Work. Every filmmaker from every branch, you learn their little secrets or how they approach their work, and it's all so very enlightening and entertaining.
All right, well, I'm glad to see you all. So when you have your questions, please write them in the chat and we can come to you, or even just a comment like, oh my gosh, cool, I never thought of that, or whatever, you can go ahead and write it there. Or if you want to write a question privately to me and you don't know how to word it exactly, and we can work through that.
I'm Ellen Lewis, and I'm a casting director. I live in New York City. I'm originally from Chicago, ended up at Columbia College in Chicago, which has a strong film department, TV department, writing department, dance department, acting department, and inner city school where I studied film. But I had gone to a couple of other schools before that and ended up at Columbia College. So I was going there in the film department and doing internships through the school. And through those internships, I ended up getting a job at a very early cable production company. Then through another friend in Chicago, I was introduced to a man named Erwin Stoff, who said that he thought that I would be good in casting. I had no idea what it was. I was not an avid cinephile, but I was always very much drawn to the arts, dance and theater, and, you know, movies as well, but not exclusively.
I'm Kate. I work with Ellen. I'm from Teaneck, New Jersey originally, and was going on the path of becoming a performer myself. Went to college at Muhlenberg College and quickly realized that I was not getting cast. So I started interning in casting offices in college. Started at a theater office, and then one office luckily led to another. And I kind of found, you know, this career that I didn't know existed, which I always loved movies and I loved TV shows and theater. And it was all the stuff that I loved about the industry, kind of, you know, working with my memory of remembering faces very well. And as I said, one office led to another, and I was lucky enough to end up with Ellen Lewis, and we've been working together for 8 years now.
Thank you. And that's great. Thank you. So Ellen, why don't we go back to how you were speaking about your career pathway and how you went to college and felt like graduating and everything wasn't, you know, necessarily what you had to do. And you later on went to work with your mentor, Juliet Taylor.
As I say, I was working. I was a little bit older at that point. I got a job working for Juliet, and I answered the phones, typed up the schedules, typed up what is known as the deal memos, which is, and you know, and in those days, obviously, you were using a typewriter and you were answering a regular phone, and you know, 3 lines would be going, and sitting in a room greeting the actors as they came in to meet with Juliet. I learned a lot being in the waiting room and meeting people as they were coming in to go in to meet with Juliet. And then of course, gradually as I was going to more theater and going to more movies and, you know, taking advantage of being in New York, the fact that I ended up in New York just felt much more comfortable to me. A producer named Robert Greenhut, who produced a lot of the Woody Allen movies for many years, as well as Mike Nichols, was doing 3 short films that came under the title of New York Stories. And the directors were Woody Allen, Francis Ford Coppola, and Martin Scorsese. So at that point, Martin did not have a casting director. And I finished working as Juliet's associate on the Woody Allen movie. She was taking the summer off. And so I went to meet Martin Scorsese. And he had just finished shooting Last Temptation of Christ had just come out, which was a very controversial film. There was a bodyguard in the waiting room when I went in to meet him. And I met him, and so when they called me, I guess about a year later, to do Goodfellas, that movie worked out incredibly well and definitely launched my career as a casting director on my own. Although I still was going back and working with Juliet, I was very lucky because Mike Nichols was a director that I had a wonderful relationship with through Juliet. And if he was doing a movie where there was location casting to do, like Biloxi Blues, or, you know, I was the one who would travel, or I would go to Los Angeles. I think on a Mike Nichols movie, and I think the movie I did after Goodfellas maybe was Scent of a Woman. So it just kind of went from there.
Nice. Do you want me to share that one scene from Goodfellas?
Sure.
Yeah, I have that right here. This is so iconic, and I think this can kind of just bring us all there. And when we think about what this really means, the cast and who was in this film.
There was Jimmy, Tommy, and me, and there was Anthony Stabile,
How you doing?
Frankie Carbone, and then there was Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy, and his guys, Frankie the Wop, Freddie No Nose.
Do you want me to play the audio still?
You know, I actually wouldn't mind you going back, and I can tell you where I met each of these people, because in fact, one of the people in this is Tony Lip, who Green Book was based on.
Oh,
And
wow.
it wasn't until the end of the movie where they were like, and this guy was a policeman, the guy before, that Heavyset fellow, that guy was a policeman who came in with another guy. And then I was like, well, wait, we should read you. It turned out that that man was arrested like 15 or 20 years later because he was actually working for the mob and doing hits for them.
Oh my God.
That man who we just passed by, he was in Raging Bull. So, you know, Marty, there are people that Marty brings into things like, oh, let's use this guy. That guy was in, he was in Raging Bull. That other guy was in Raging Bull. He's the guy who's dead now, but he was killed. He worked for the mob, actually, even though he was a renowned policeman. That's Tony Lip, who I met, really a lovely man. I don't remember who that guy is. And that guy, where did I meet that guy? This is a guy I knew through working for Juliet, named Anthony Powers. And so I had met him, you know, over my years of working for Juliet. That fellow, couple of these guys.
Is that Joe Bono, El?
Oh, that was Joe Bono. You're right. And this is the guy, Anthony Powers, who did, he was in some Woody Allen movies, I think, that I met through Juliet. And that's Vinny Pastore, right, from Sopranos, but we cast him first. And that's Tony Darrow, who Marty saw on a weird, like, public access TV channel and wanted me to try him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fun to kind of look at just, you know, the faces, and it obviously was a long time ago. And there's Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta. The casting of Goodfellas started with a dinner that I was taken to with Ray Liotta by Nick Pileggi, who wrote the book, Wise Guy, that Goodfellas is based on, and Marty. And, you know, this is like my first thing. But so we went to this Italian restaurant. kind of a well-known place called Rayo's. And Nick Pileggi ate at this restaurant regularly. People knew that we were coming to the restaurant that night for dinner. And different people were coming over to the table.
Oh my gosh.
To meet us, to meet Marty, to kind of pay homage to Marty. And then it would be like, okay, this is somebody you can think about for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And here's somebody you can't think about for the movie. Like they're a little too high up in the chain.
There's real people out there. And so these are real, by too high up, that was like, for all those who weren't paying attention, code for they were in the mob on some level, and this is a real people out there. So that's how when you mentioned that one of them actually was supposed a cop in real life, and then actually
he was a crooked
dirty.
cop. I was working in the Warner Brothers building on 52nd Street, and I looked at Radio City was right outside, and on the marquee, it said that they were having doo-wop night. So in my mind, I thought doo-wop, wait, I think those like are Italian, might be Italian guys, and I think I should call and see who's organizing this. So one of the doo-wop singers brought that cop. And then if you saw The Irishman, there are people that we used in The Irishman. There are some people who are in Casino, but each movie has its own flavor, so it does change. But that scene's a fun scene to show, just because it's so many different faces. I see casting as very creative, obviously, and a very visual. It's I took painting and I took different art classes, but I was not very good at it. And this is one of the reasons why I love casting, because I see casting as painting with faces. It's about creating the world of the script and for the director.
Yeah, can you break down the casting role for us?
So we're generally, after the screenwriter and the screenplay, we're the first person who comes on a movie. Sometimes they'll give you book references, film references, if it's based on a true story. So there will be different things that you're pulling from. In TV, the writer is the captain of the ship. And the director many times is barely involved. The director's just like a guy for hire. It depends, but they really are. They're not, it's the writer who's running that.
In TV.
Running the show, as they say, literally the show. Wow. But in film, the director is who, hopefully it's a one-on-one. Obviously, things are very different now. Well, God only knows where we're going to be. But, producers can be involved, but I really love the one-on-one with the director. So, you're doing a breakdown of the script of every part that's in the movie, the tiniest parts. So I'm as excited about every one of those people who are sitting at that table as I am about the leads of the movie. Because to me, that's the texture of the overall picture, are all those tiny roles. So anyway, we do that. We start obviously with the biggest roles and it goes down. Casting is also a lot about details. We work very closely with the line producer and the first or second assistant director. Those jobs are vital to what we do because we are, organizing the scheduling of all the actors who are in the movie. So again, and everything that I learned working in Juliet's office, and the Woody Allen movies that I worked on, which were fantastic, but the dates would change all the time. So I was constantly in touch with the agents. And assistant directors making these changes and trying to keep up and not lose an actor. When I go into a director, everything has to be as perfect as it can be. I have to be as prepared as I can be. Like on my schedule, I'll write down little notes about the actor because I want to be able to say something to the director, or the director maybe is going to ask me a question and I want to be able to, it doesn't mean that I can always answer because I can't. I don't have a great memory, and I certainly don't now. Kate has an amazing memory, so it's perfect. So a lot of times we all look to Kate. But
that might be a good segue into Kate and how maybe things might have been a little bit, you mentioned, you know, different for you as you were getting started with Ellen and maybe a little bit before. Can you talk on some of those differences that maybe
working for different people? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I started in a theater office, Binder Casting. They're still around. They do different kinds of stuff now, but I think the basis of what I learned was always the same for me, at least in the offices that I was lucky enough to work in. You know, you really want to be on top of if there's an avail issue with an actor. I would write it on every piece of paper that person that I would pass on to the higher up. You know, you never want to mistake something and then it get farther along. And, you know, theater is different than film and TV. And it was a lot of dance calls and coordinating a accompanist and that kind of thing. And then as I transitioned, I worked for Cindy Tolan. And that was a good office because she did both theater and kind of TV film. So I was able to kind of see both sides. And that's really where I kind of learned that like my fandom of TV and movies could apply to a job. It's answering phones and just really being, what can I help with? What do you need? You know, it's a lot of that at the beginning, and you're kind of just ready to do whatever anybody needs, and you kind of just start clocking people's preferences. And each office is different, has different preferences. Each director has different preferences. And so as I went from office to office, I was able to build on that and kind of just take my time in each new office and learn the different personalities and then see where my basket of skills applied to their particular needs. Details are everything. Schedules are everything. It was helpful that I watch a lot of TV just as a person. So I could talk to it. An agent calls and brings up an actor and I could say, but what about this TV show that they're on that seems to be doing really well? And they'll be like, oh, right. You don't want a director to fall in love with somebody and then it turns out they have commitments that make them unavailable. That's what we try to avoid on all sides, no matter how big or small the part is.
It was a very challenging movie to cast. There were probably 120 speaking parts in it.
Oh my God.
Many of the roles are very small. Originally, Lieutenant Dan, Robert Zemeckis offered that part to Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon turned the part down. I mean, this has been talked about. Tom Hanks actually stepped in and said, what about some of the people from the Steppenwolf Company? Steppenwolf is a theater company out of Chicago.
Oh,
the
wow.
real challenge of the film was that we had all these roles and Robert Zemeckis just was not pulling a trigger on anybody. So it was very, very stressful for me. You know, what you're hoping every time is that you're going to show a director people and the director will make choices.
It's just awesome to think about. You were in these spaces casting real people from the South to play. So that to get the accent right, was it, what were some of the reasons why you chose the real people down there versus, you know?
It wasn't necessarily about the accent, but the other thing that I want to stress, and I know that this isn't, you know, there are acting communities everywhere. People act through their churches or through different kinds of organizations. And so if you have an open call in a community, and obviously you try to get the word out, then people who do this come to that open call. And that's a lot how that movie got cast.
I have a question here from a student. They sent me it directly, if you don't mind me jumping
Sure.
in. This one's from Aria. I'm gonna read it, and then Aria, if you want to clarify a little bit. So she was asking about what are some common casting mistakes that filmmakers tend to do, and especially specifically young filmmakers and with scheduling. And Aria, do you just want to say hi and expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Hi. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the mistakes that they would make?
Aria, I think the point is anyone can make a mistake at any point. And I think that as young filmmakers, what you want to do is, here's all I look for in an audition. Do I believe you? Do I believe the words that you're saying to me? So I don't think that there's a common mistake per se. I do think that everything does come down to the director in a way. I think that when a director is good, that most of the movie will be good and the actors will be good. But I just think you're looking in an audition, if someone's auditioning for you, do you believe them?
Yeah, and one of your follow-up questions, Ari, you have a few here. Do you want to do just the one right after that you sent?
Yeah, thank you for answering my question.
Of course.
Yeah, and what does do you believe them look like concretely if we're making a film?
Is there a defining thing, or is it just like a gut feeling you get?
It's a gut feeling, yes, Abby. It's a gut feeling.
I think it all depends on the world you're creating, and as you, the director, and your view of it. And if it's stylized, if it's based in a real reality, that's going to inform the kind of actor that you're going to respond to. Like Ellen says, like Mike Nichols loved trained actors.
Right.
Martin Scorsese, depending on the part, could go with a real person, or depending on, what the part needs.
Every director is different.
Yeah, and how the different directors communicate with actors when auditioning.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit about, how they make those lists and create those? And I know before when we were speaking, you were talking about how you're helping them tell their story, essentially.
I try to open my mind as much as possible, and then I'll narrow that list down, and then I will sit with the director, hopefully, and not just send it to them. What ends up happening, I worked for Martin Scorsese since 1989, so it's 30 years. It's a 31-year relationship. It's a long time. So I have a sense of who he's going to respond to.
Yeah. Should we talk a little bit about Wolf of Wall Street? I'm getting some private messages saying they still want to hear about Leo.
So, obviously Leo's been the star of a bunch of movies that I've done. There are a lot of good stories about the casting of this. We offered the Matthew McConaughey part to several other people who turned it down, which just goes to show that if you somehow cast it right, like a part like that ends up standing out. And, if you're looking on a page, you don't think necessarily that's going to happen. But he was phenomenal. And Matthew McConaughey had recently done this movie called Mud and a movie called Lincoln Lawyer, which was taking him in a slightly different direction from the romantic comedies he had been doing. And Marty had seen Mud, and I had seen Lincoln Lawyer. And, so we were both really like that idea. I'll talk about Margot Robbie. Do you want to keep going with the clips, or should I can talk about the Jonah Hill story.
Go ahead, talk. Okay. I'll let you choose. Jonah Hill is very interesting, of course, but go for it, Ellen.
So I talk to agents a lot, and I got a call from Jonah Hill's agent saying, Jonah wants to audition for this movie. Not only does Jonah want to be in the movie? But Jonah wants to read for the movie. And, you know, when I said, but I think maybe he could just meet with Marty, and she's like, no, he actually wants to read for the movie. So I kind of developed a relationship with Jonah because I talked him through. So we read a couple of people. Jonah came in. The air conditioning was broken in the room. It was kind of a scene out of Broadcast News, if anybody has seen that movie, where all of a sudden he's kind of sweating. And he said, wait, can we stop for a minute? Is there a problem here? And then Marty was like, you know, there is. The air conditioning's broken. So we had to move into another room, and the rest is, you know, history, as they say. I mean, he's fantastic in the movie. Margot Robbie, you know, we put a breakdown out, which goes to all the agencies. And in that breakdown, we, you know, said there will be nudity involved in this role, because that was an important thing to get out there. But, you know, we were really lucky because we saw some wonderful actors. We probably read with Leo about 6 actresses. And Margot came in on the second day to be as beautiful as she is and to be as good of an actor as she is. She's a fantastic, fantastic actress. So we really got lucky. She had done the TV show Pan Am before. Obviously, you know, she's Australian, but she had done Pan Am. Her agent had submitted her, but our production designer on the movie had been the production designer on Pan Am, Bob Shaw. So he had mentioned her to me as well.
Nice.
And then, you know, the other thing that's tricky about casting, and just so you know, like, you really, you know, I don't talk about the people who auditioned and didn't get the part. It's a very difficult career choice because you're not in control of it, because other people are making a decision, unless you decide to start your own theater company or work with your friends, which I highly recommend. But, you know, it's really hard because you're going in, you're auditioning, you're putting yourself on the line. It's very vulnerable, and only one person is going to get the part. I think of it as very private. I think it's one of the reasons why casting directors aren't acknowledged that much, because I won't tell you the actresses who came in and read for Marty and Leo and didn't get the role, because I don't think that's respectful to them.
Do you think that builds your trust with those actors then also?
I think it's very hard for actors to understand. I think that actors, you know, a casting director is seen as a roadblock in many ways. The fact is, we want to cast the part. We want you to do well when you are coming into the room. So again, one of the most important things, and I think this is really, really important, is when an actor comes in, you don't have to make conversation with them, but it's very important, I think, for you to greet them, introduce yourself, and thank them. So from the minute that an actor comes to my office, and this is what I did with Juliet, anybody who's older, I call them Mr. or Miss, and, you know, anybody else can, you know, thank you so much for coming today.
I think that's so important. And that actually, Kelsey wrote in here, and she actually was asked Miss Kate or Miss Ellen. So there was a title there. So Kelsey, you want to ask your question? I think it leads into what a little bit what Ellen was saying about being in the space.
My question was, what's the most important leadership lesson you've learned, and how has it proven invaluable?
There are many casting directors now, and probably anybody else that you would invite to speak to a class is going to have a much bigger office than I do. I cast one thing at a time.
What I've learned, and I've been in a couple different offices, is that the tone and the mood of everyone kind of stems from the passion of the person at the top. And Ellen is very passionate, and so we all kind of get excited, and each new project we're curious about the world that we're getting in, and it's infectious, and you get excited about learning about these new places and things like that. And it's just as, you know, you feed off of the people that you're with. It can be very stressful, you know, it's not pleasant and flower all the time, but like in that stress, you're hoping to at least still be able to enjoy what you do and really being a considerate person that you have other people with you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I can field maybe one more question, but actually what we can do is maybe take a moment and if you don't mind, going to the students, and why don't we just talk about if you're in the narrative lab, your log line, and who your characters are, who you're gonna cast. We're just gonna do a quick conversation about, like, with as many people as we can for the next few minutes. You know, but I'd love to hear from the narrative lab because you really are in this casting right now. But if other students are working on other projects and they want to share or ask a question, feel free. So I'm just gonna pull one person at random. How about Elijah?
Okay, good afternoon, Ms. Lewis.
Ellen, yeah.
Yes, my film, short film I'm creating right now is entitled Behave. And this film is an exploration of a very a strained relationship between two sisters that becomes more tumultuous when a third member decides to and gets involved into the relationship. One of the sisters is an aspiring DJ who has organized a party, which unfortunately is not allowed now, it's to impress this male mentor. Her sister, however, is rebelling against the idea, seeing that there's something more than tension of the male DJ is far more ominous. And an occurrence happens at that party, which really puts a test in a tense relationship that's already strained. The film involves, the primary characters are two females and one male. But it's also, in this situation, this film is also going to be shot in one take.
Wow.
Meaning that it's going to be continuous. I do have some questions about, like, what are the qualities or aspects what I should perceive in an actor or actress when casting.
Here's something important to me, Elijah. Everybody, you need to think about that they all kind of fit together. They're all of a whole.
The younger sister is sort of 18, the oldest 19.
Perfect. So just know that you can look into those schools as well.
That's really great. That actually, I did get a message. I kind of lost it here, who it was from, but they were asking about casting specifically in New York City, and if you don't have a budget.
So, Kate, how do you do it? What do you say? How do you do it?
I would reach out to the acting schools and the Atlantic and Stella Adler and all the kind of, you know, the smaller acting schools too, and you just kind of put the word out.
So when people make movies, and they're not getting any compensation, so I think you just say that right up front. And I don't know how long your shooting schedule is.
Most films will shoot about 2-3 days tops.
Got it.
And as soon as they can shoot. So likely these films are shooting in this summer. Our plan is this summer.
Right. So I just, you just say it right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, student film.
Student film.
Yeah. Stay
fluid.
That's great advice, and I can imagine that when you say it, like, just they fit together. I'm thinking about who would hang out or what kind of, maybe there's some kind of fashion vibe. Maybe it's not the fashion. I understand what you mean. It's
a very, Mike Nichols said this, and I just read this book about him. And Natalie Portman actually quotes this, and he used to say this. And again, it's an intuition that everybody is a version of the same person.
I'm going
Thank
to
you very
bring
much.
another Narrative Lab student to share about their story.
Yeah.
Toby, your mentor's on here because I know you wanted to take something away from this chat, and I'm sure you have a question. So why don't you share about your...
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, my name is Toby. My film is about a straight out of college couple who move into their first apartment together. And, you know, they're well on their way into getting into their jobs, getting into their life. But the boyfriend in the relationship, whose name is Jonah, his interest is piqued by their elderly landlord and her sort of odd practices, like wanting the rent in $20 bills and not letting them into the basement. And Jonah gets completely thrown off track with his life to follow her and figure out what's going on. And eventually he stumbles upon an underground mafia of grandmothers, whose goal is pretty much to take over the world. So, you know, it's going to be a bit interesting to cast. And I guess if I had one question, which isn't exactly specific to my film, but you know, because we're in this social distancing, all of the auditions that I'm getting back from backstage, which is just a handful so far. My question is, you know, what's something I could get from such a short period of time with somebody where I can't even really, you know, give them feedback?
But you can, if you like someone, right, Kate? Then you could do FaceTime and like we just did it. And Kate did an audition with somebody where you're FaceTiming and reading with them.
And then you can give them feedback. I mean, you don't have to make it the biggest scene that you have, but at least you can get a feel for, you know, have a quick conversation and see how you feel.
It is really fun to think about what kind of real places. And then again, just, you know, thank you so much. And this is my first movie, or this is my second movie, you know, like, I mean, you can just be the human that you are with them and respectful and nice. And then it's fantastic.
And I think you'll be able to tell who you have a rapport with pretty quickly.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
These are all, both of these sound fantastic.
Really interesting, yeah.
Really great.
It's a lot of fun.
Really cool too. These are great.
John and I have a fun job.
I'm wondering if any of our friends in Atlanta are currently casting or prepping movies.
Yeah.
Or maybe just went through it and have an experience to share. So I know we have some narrative filmmakers on the call.
Hi. So my film is basically about a young girl who lives with her strictly religious mother, and she has a boyfriend. And basically her childhood best friend comes back into her life, and she kind of realizes that she has feelings for her best friend, who happens to be a girl. So that's kind of frowned upon for her mother's beliefs, and also since she has a boyfriend. So she's basically going through the struggles of coming to terms with her truth about her sexuality. So right now I'm just going through casting on Backstage, and we got some auditions back. None of them really kind of, I guess, opened my eyes to anything. There was one person that I thought was interesting for the lead, but so far I haven't thought of casting anyone yet.
You guys got to reach out to the schools, I think. You know, and that's the main thing that I can suggest, because you're doing things with young people. And how old are your characters, Julissa?
They're all in their teens, like 16 and 17.
16, 17. So obviously you want to be clear about what your content is. So I think Backstage is great, but I think you can get into
specific
schools.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You can reach a department head or an English teacher or someone who can get you at least be able to like spread a flyer around or call specific children that they might think might be into it or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I always remind my students, the good news is that we're in New York, and New York is full of talent. There's always talent. There's always, the person you're looking for is there if you're in New York City and you're looking. There, you know, that grand mafia, or, you know, that young actor who's going to jump off the screen, they're all there.
look into some of the art schools that are scattered all over. And again, actually, church groups and things like that probably are beneficial even for kids, you know, for students.
Yeah.
You're looking for communities to reach into, right?
Right.
So
I think that kind of goes, Jalissa just asked a follow-up question. Do you want to just say it out loud, Jalissa?
Sure. So I just basically wanted to know, like, how open does casting go for more diverse actors, such as people who are LGBT or even have disabilities?
That's depending on the material.
Yeah.
Like that dictates what, you know, if it's completely open and it can be all ethnicities, then we put that on the breakdown and just let people submit who they think fits the description or the, you know, that's more of a personality.
It's interesting, the idea of like you're casting for a personality, not necessarily a look.
It just depends. If the script is completely open and it can be whatever the director sees, then we have the freedom to kind of bring as many, like all these different options. But if it's very specific to the story or the time period or the, you know, then we are as specific as we need to be to serve the character.
well, I think it's material based, and I think it depends again on what the director might want to do. I have to say, for the most part, the things that I've worked on have been specific to a world. But there are other people who are going to take much bigger chances and do more diverse casting, and, you know.
Thank you, that's helpful. I want to ask a few more Narrative Lab students, and then we can break away from questions. So Thea, we haven't heard from you.
Hi, my film is about two girls named Margot and Sadie who have been friends throughout school, and so they're seniors in high school, and they have planned to go on this road trip as their like last hurrah before college. And so they like steal money to go on this trip, and then it kind of gets derailed, and their car is stolen, and it kind of ends in their friendship like falling apart, and they get in a big fight. So the characters I'm casting, I guess it's just Margot and Sadie, and then a small part for whoever's gonna steal the car. I go to an art school, so I feel like if I asked people in the theater program to reach out, that would be something I should utilize.
Totally, exactly. And then also, if you go to an art school, maybe other people who are looking for young people can, you know, your contact.
That's great.
That sounds great.
Right.
Thank you, Thea.
You know, I want to just point out Kim. Our Kim is casting children, and we haven't done.
Oh, yes, we can.
Yeah.
Kim,
Kim,
I'm sorry.
Kim, do we talk, because that's one casting challenge, and her movie is very much a it's more of in a fairy tale world. It's a real world, but it goes into a supernatural world. So she's creating a very unique kind of world. Do you want to share what your story is, Kim, and who you're casting?
My story is about two brothers, and basically one brother gets more attention from the parents, which makes the other brother hate him or like dislike him a lot because he gets like pushed to the side. The older brother, he gets so angry at him that like in his mind he creates a monster and makes him like disappear, and he like wakes up in this world where his brother is just like gone. In the end, he has to like save his brother from this monster, and he has to like bring him back to his world. The people I'm casting, they're very like they're like around 13 and 14, or like 13. In the story at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be harder since I can't do things like night shoots, and I have to be more careful since they're like younger. Right. And
be careful about the hours that you're shooting. Right, you can't. I mean, obviously you're not union, but if you're working with kids, you have to be careful about that.
There might be, you know, high school kids who look young enough, so you might still want to reach out to the schools and stuff. And it's just about letting them know the material and, you know, talking to parents and just making sure everyone's really comfortable.
You should probably write a letter, Kim, describing what the story is. It'd be interesting if you could find
two brothers.
And there are children's theaters. There's one in our building. at Brooklyn Children's Theater.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
true. We really do have a theater in our building.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
the area has a lot of children's performing arts places that you could probably reach out to and just see what they have.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go one last one because I have it here with Noor, and he's with our Fellows program.
So I'm a cinematographer for the Fellows, and currently we are all working on a pandemic project where we're trying to shoot a feature film while also practicing social distancing. Our project is about it's about a relationship that is between a couple, and they get separated because of the pandemic, and how their relationship play out through like digital media platforms like Snapchat, FaceTime, like Zoom, and all that stuff. Since you guys mentioned like how actors like fit in to a role, I was wondering how would you guys like visualize, you know, like these actors fitting into a role digitally?
I mean, you're still casting humans, so it's the same principle. They just happen to be through a screen instead of filming them, you know, it's just a different thing, but it's still looking for the people who portray the relationship that you want to talk about.
I mean, you can create this, Noor. That's the exciting thing about, you know, using the pandemic as a starting point of how people are now communicating and connecting. I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, I think everybody's projects really sound great. I think this sounds fantastic, and there's no rule to it, but it's just what Kate's saying. You're still going to go with who do you respond to, and, you know, you're going on the same thing, all the same principles.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks, Noor. So I'm gonna bring it back to you, Ellen, and just ask you if you wanted to speak a little bit more about maybe what makes a compelling actor.
There is no one rule at all. And that's why it's always exciting and new every time. Because, you know, everybody's describing their stories and they're great. And then someone's going to read for you, or you're going to meet someone, and that's compelling to you.
It's subjective, as all art is. One person could meet one person and think they're amazing, and another person can meet them and say, oh, not for me.
I also had alerted here, you wanted to maybe highlight talking about Ready Player One. Does that relate at all to you know, our conversation? Can you bring it in with that?
Ready Player One was about a huge search for, you know, that was really like big outreach of, you know, going online, and we hired somebody in London to put young men and women on tape. And, you know, it was just seeing a lot of people and then doing a lot of chemistry reads. But I would say that it was easier. Stephen decided on Olivia Cook fairly early, and then the search for the young man went on for quite a long time. It's challenging. Casting can be very challenging. Kate said this, like, you know, I'm not familiar with the world of gaming. So I was casting, I was not thinking about them being their avatars. I barely knew what an avatar was before I did Ready Player One, even though I saw Avatar. But I still didn't know what avatars were. So I was still thinking about the human. Who was the human being that we were casting? Lena Waithe, we were reading actresses for that role. And this is where, again, you're just trying to pay attention and be curious about everything. I met with her, and it turned out she's from Chicago too, and she went to my college. So, but obviously she is a multi-talented woman and a real force. But when we cast her, that wasn't all happening right at that moment. So we caught her kind of right on the cusp. So even for Steven Spielberg, this was like, they had to be able to project something bigger for when they would be playing the avatar.
Through the technology.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That speaks to one of our students who is doing Anthony. His is all animation.
Cool.
Do you want to share a little bit about it?
Oh, Yep. Hello. So my animated short follows the journey of a teenager as he tries to save his younger brother from those that are hunting him for his power and also for money.
I think that is so cool, and I love animated movies. I worked on Charlotte's Web. I co-cast it with David Rubin, actually, the president of the Academy. The face is so important to me. So I just hear a voice, I have no idea, you know? But I love animated movies, so, but I don't, it is definitely not my forte.
No worries. We don't, I think I could do at least one more question. Thank you, Anthony. From Kelsey here.
You mentioned one of your colleagues was a casting director and an actress, and I wanted to know, do you think this is a good way to break into the industry? Because I know you build relationships and opportunities for yourself that way. And do you think that's a good way to put yourself in the necessary opportunities?
My friend Marcia, at the time that she was working for me, was not acting as much, and she was definitely focused more on casting. And that's where she was getting the work. There's a phenomenal actress and casting director named Joanna Merlin, who has been very successful at both things. If for myself, in my office, I want people who are interested in movies and interested in theater and interested in casting. But that's just me, you know, but because definitely other offices are totally open to that, Kelsey. But I think the mistake is to think that you're gonna make the contacts and then you're gonna have an acting career. There's no sure bet on anything, but I think it's a very interesting way for actors to see from the other side of what it is. And I think a lot of times it's not what actors think it is.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ellen, what do you think is the most rewarding part about your career? I mean, why has this really been your life? Why has you made it your life?
Love movies and theaters, and I love interacting with artistic people. As I say, almost from the minute that I met Juliet, I didn't know what it was, but you know, just sitting in the office and answering the phones, it just felt right to me immediately. My first task on Broadway Danny Rose it's a movie where Woody Allen is playing a talent agent for like these comedians and, you know, kooky people. And my first task was finding all of the variety acts. What could be better?
Fun.
You know, archers and people with parrots that talked and, you know, like really like the craziest things.
That's awesome.
So it just fits. I just feel like one thing leads to another if you are engaged and interested. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like, I didn't start working for Julia till I was 28 years old. And I didn't cast on my own till I was, 8.5 years later, whatever that is. You know, so I just think that there's no time sequence on anything. And I think all of our journeys are what our journeys are.
That's a really beautiful note to end this on, Ellen. Also, I just want to say it's such an honor to be able to speak with you and guide this conversation with the Academy and Patrick and Roger and John and the other John. And I really appreciate them being, bringing us to the space and being able to share this conversation with so many people. I'm really grateful for your time. So thank you so much.
This was all really terrific. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Ellen. This is really fantastic. And I hope you young filmmakers got as much out of it as I did, because I certainly learned more about casting and actors and and personalities and relationships. So thank you, you two. It's very enlightening.
Thanks, guys.